Again, the success of the open house format has been really overwhelming, I think, for everybody today. And sometimes we do panels and you get a smaller group. So it's really nice. I think the more the merrier, and it's really nice to have you all here. My name is Frank Everett. I am vice chairman for jewelry here in New York. I have been with Sotheby's for 13 years, and prior to my time here, I had a long career in jewelry. First, I worked for the Italian house Bulgari. Then I joined Tiffany & Company, and I moved around the country quite a bit with Tiffany, worked for them for many years, and I finished my retail career at Harry Winston, which was always a dream for me to work at Winston. And then 13 years ago, Sotheby's called me. And it was interesting because they called and they described this role, and did I know anyone? Because they'd known that I'd worked for different brands around the US. I'd worked in San Francisco and Philadelphia, Miami, Los Angeles. And they described it, and I said, well, I think I might like to do that. So I came to New York and I interviewed, and that was it. So I've been here 13 years, and my role is really, I do have the perfect job for me, because I get to work with different jewelry every season. I get to work with every style, every period, every maker. And it's just a very exciting treasure hunt, and it changes every season. So it's both exciting and scary when you're done with an auction. The cupboards are literally bare. And so you have to kind of start that it's not just selling it, you have to find it first. So what I prepared for you today is just a little overview. I was inspired by this book. This is a new book that just came out. It's called The Jewelry Book. It's a series by Phaidon Publishing. They started with, I believe, the fashion book. Then they made the art book, they made the photography book, they made the men's fashion book, and we've all been waiting for this to be published. So it's called The Jewelry Book. It's an A to Z overview or compendium or encyclopedia, if you will, of jewelry. So there are 300 entries of the most important jewelers, designers, and collectors of jewelry. It's a fascinating book. My friend Melanie Grant was the editor, and I've worked with her previously. We did a show here together called Brilliant and Black, where we highlighted the work of 20 contemporary Black designers. That was about 4 years ago. And so Melanie is a dear friend, and when she came and said, could we do the launch at Sotheby's, I said, of course. So we had a lovely party last week, and we installed a little exhibition of some of the highlights. But if you look at the book, you'll see, it's a perfect example. Every entry just has one photograph and a brief description. So to me, this is just like the one you keep out on the coffee table for fun, and you pick up every once in a while and learn a great fact or something about a great house. So this inspired me to just talk to you about 12 different ideas, and I'll just give you some top line points of each one. Mostly what I'm going to talk about is what differentiates these brands from one another and what makes them special, what makes them collectible, what makes them valuable. Most of the time in jewelry, what adds value is the rarity and the quality. Those are the two most important things. There are many things. We have about 10 boxes that we tick at Sotheby's whenever we're looking at any object to determine the value of an object. They include provenance, of course, size, historical significance. But for me, rarity and quality are at the top of the list when it comes to jewelry. So I think we're just going to jump in, and then after we do each, we'll do the slides, then we'll go back and go through them again and take questions about each one, because I would love to hear from you, and I'm going to pass some things around as we do this so you can handle the pieces. Most of them, I don't think there's anything here too fragile that we can't pass around. And also I should say that this book is for sale here, and it's not for sale anywhere else yet. So Phaidon gave us sort of the first exclusive, and so you can buy it downstairs. I think there's still about 10 copies left, right, downstairs? And so it's a very exciting opportunity to sort of get this before you can't even buy it on Amazon yet. So anyway, it's a great book. I highly recommend it, and we're thrilled for Melanie Grant and the team there. So let's just kick off. Where do we start? Hemmerly. And again, feel free if you do have a question. I am going to start with the basics and kind of assume that you don't know who they are. Hemmerly are our dear friends in Munich, Germany. They are, in my mind, one of the top 3 contemporary designers working today. What's fascinating to me about Hemmerly Jewels, a lot of things are fascinating, but the company is 130 years old. So they've been around making very traditional jewelry in Germany, in Munich, for more than a century. The business has now been handed to the son, Christian Hemmerly, and he and his wife, Yasmin, she's Egyptian, and he's from Munich. They met at university, and they have turned this business into something completely different. So now they are the innovators and the leaders in some of the most interesting contemporary jewelry that's being made today. So these earrings, for instance, these are the ones that are in the back. These are green, tourmalines, and peridot. One of the things that makes Hemmerle so interesting is the metals that they use. They are masters of metal. They set precious gemstones and metals that no one else would ever think to use, and no one does. Copper, for instance, bronze, steel, and iron. This is not typical of high jewelry, right? All the other houses are using either platinum for diamonds and precious stones. They use a lot of 18 karat gold. So it's very unusual, their use. They've also developed work in titanium, because titanium is very light. So you can create a huge look like this in a jewel, especially an earring or a bracelet, that's not so heavy but still gives you that big volume. When they started, Christian Hemmerle just told me recently, when they started working with titanium about 15, 18 years ago, they could only achieve 10 colors. Now they can actually achieve any color, just the way when you go to the paint store and they match your paint. Now they can color titanium any color you want. And what's so great about it is then you see the metal is the same color as the stone, so there's no contrast of platinum or gold against the green stone, it's green. This happens to be patinated copper, but they always like to match the metal to the stone. That's kind of the hallmark of Hemmerle. One of the things that I will say about almost every jeweler represented here is that the rarity is important in that almost every piece is one of a kind. These were made for a particular pair of gems that they found. They may make another pair of green earrings like this, but they may be bigger, they may be smaller, they may not have the same saturation of color, they may be a different hue. So everything pretty much is one of a kind. And that, again, is what drives rarity. When you're in the auction world, especially in the auction room, we say often when people are like, well, should I bid one more time? Should I bid one more time? Sometimes we'll say, well, find another one. And then they bid. And that's true of a lot of pieces. Now, it's not, there are great pieces of jewelry that are repeatable and sell very well. There are Alhambra necklaces, there are love bracelets, all of those icons that are repeatable. But when you get to these one-of-a-kind pieces like Hemmerle makes, they really are highly sought after. And so the prices are so strong at auction, they kind of mirror their retail prices, which is unusual. Generally, auction prices are a bit lower than retail, not Hemmerle. Verdura. Okay, this man, I wish of all the jewelers in the world, I wish I could have met Fulco di Verdura. You see him on the right. He was the last person to hold the title of the Duke of Verdura in Sicily. So he came from a titled Sicilian family, one of those titled families that had no money. So he was a very well-known sort of bon vivant in Europe in his youth, and he happened to be in Venice, happened to be at a party being hosted by Cole Porter and his wife Linda Porter, where they happened to introduce him to Coco Chanel. So that was a lot of luck and a lot of stacking it up in the right way. It changed his life. So this young man this was probably about 1925, 26, this young man met Coco Chanel. She took him under her wing and he started first designing buttons for Chanel and then costume jewelry. And he was really responsible for Chanel embracing the Byzantine world of design that stays with the Chanel brand today. Her famous pair of Maltese cross cuffs that he made were, the first pair were costume, then he made her a pair in real materials, gold and real gemstones, and then it just went from there. Necklaces, bracelets, earrings. The influence of Byzantine design on Chanel is, as I said, still felt today, especially in the costume jewelry. So he started it. He came to this country and opened a shop in 1939. So we really consider him an American brand because the first time he started making jewelry under his own label, Verdura Jewels, was right here on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And what I love about him is that he was with his clients. He lived the same life as his clients. He lived with them, he vacationed with them. He was with them all the time. Most of the pieces were commissioned by his clients. And so again, all one-of-a-kind things. If anybody watched the series last year about the Swans, right, the great Swans, Babe Paley and Betsy Cushing Whitney, they all loved him and they all loved his jewelry. So we were fortunate here. I did see a sale of some jewelry that came from all three Cushing sisters, Babe Paley, her sister Minnie, and her sister Betsy Cushing Whitney. And they all had fabulous collections, and they all had lots of Verdura because he was a personal friend. They collaborated with him. Sometimes they would take family gemstones and have him create things. Sometimes he would make something for a specific dress. He famously made a tiara for one party, a wheat sheaf tiara for Betsy Cushing Whitney, I think it was, all gold and diamonds, and she wore it to one ball and never wore it again. So I think that's in the Verdura Museum here. It's a wonderful salon. They're on the 12th floor of a building on Fifth Avenue now above the Bergdorf's men's store, so they do not have a street level presence. But they're still a quite special and niche brand, and most things are one of a kind. Colored stones are a favorite. This brooch that you see in the picture, which I will pass around, is to me just a brilliant design. It's called the lightning bolt, and if you can see the stone, he designed it because he broke the stone. He was setting it and he broke it. He cracked it right in half, and so he made lemonade out of lemons. And he was so popular that he started cracking the stones, cleaving them in half to create lightning bolts, and they still make them. This original one was probably about 1945, and they still make them today. So be careful of the pin stem, but I will let you pass that one around. Actually, I'm going to pass we'll just do one of the Hemmerly earrings. If you want to pass that one, just to feel it, feel the articulation of the pieces, the weight of them. These are all, everything on the table is really exceptionally well made.
Is it okay if I take a picture?
Yes, please. Pictures are fine. Pass it around. You can try it on. So I'm very fond of Verdura, and the family that owns Verdura is a gentleman, Ward Landrigan, and his son Nico Landrigan own the company now. And Ward Landrigan was a jewelry specialist here at Sotheby's for many, many years. He met his wife here, and I'm very good friends with his son Nico. So this brand is very near and dear to my heart. And again, the prices are very strong at auction because these pieces are rare and not easy to come by. Tiffany, focusing mostly on Schlumberger for a couple of reasons. Tiffany now, as you know, is owned by the French house, LVMH. And the French in particular are obsessed with their own patrimony. They keep the best archives. They keep the best museum collections. American companies don't do it so much. There are a lot of big gaps in the archives of American companies. Tiffany is not one of them. They've always kept a pretty thorough archive. But now, since LVMH bought them, they are really, really delving deep into their past. And Schlumberger, who was French, was a designer who came to New York not long after Verdura. They were kind of frenemies, rivals, and he opened his shop a little bit after Verdura, more like the late 40s. And he was on his own in New York and knew a lot of the ladies. Tiffany basically bought him. They gave him such a good deal that he came and started designing with his own creative, but he gave his designs to Tiffany. He was made a vice president, and he stayed with Tiffany for the rest of his life. So Schlumberger is very important to the French and very important to Tiffany. This is called the Bird on a Rock. This I would say is an icon. I refrain from using the word icon too much because there are so many pieces of jewelry that we say are iconic from all the great houses. I could name 20 pieces from Tiffany alone that I could consider icons. This is an icon. The first Bird on a Rock was created by Schlumberger to showcase the famous Tiffany diamond, which is a 200-carat yellow cushion. You can see it in the store. They display it in the store. It's been worn, I think, 3 times. Lady Gaga wore it once. Madonna might have worn it once, and of course Audrey Hepburn wore it in a big Schlumberger necklace. But the original jewel designed by Schlumberger for that diamond was the Bird on a Rock. The Bird on a Rock has been around forever. It's always sold well, but in recent years, since the acquisition by LVMH, they have really latched onto it. They've come up with 100 new iterations of the Bird on a Rock. They now set them on natural pearls. They do all kinds of things. They do mini versions. They do a little bird charm. And to me, that really means it's an icon that's not going anywhere. They even have gotten men to wear 2 of them at once, which I think that's okay. If you're going to wear 2 birds, then you really love that Bird on a Rock. So this is just a beautiful one. This one is amethyst. I will close the pin stem and pass this around. And I would use this to point out again the value of auction. I don't, I have great relationships with all my dear friends in retail, so I don't like to compare pricing too much because it is a different experience. But this is something that you could buy at auction for $20,000 to $25,000, and it retails, I think, now for almost $100,000. So big price difference. Now that doesn't mean you can just walk into Sotheby's and get one, right? You may need to wait until it comes to auction, and then maybe you'll get outbid, and then you have to wait for another season. So you do have to kind of get that mindset and play the game a little bit. But the bird on a rock, if I had one, I actually haven't seen a bird on a rock on a woman in a long time. Honestly, it's like
Pearl's got like 8.
Yeah, it's become
That's my birthstone.
the amethyst.
Yeah.
Well, you should have this one. Let's have that one around.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Schlumberger, just to talk a little bit more about him, he was really an amazing artist. He's very special to Sotheby's too, because we sold the collection of Mrs. Hall Mellon, Bunny Mellon. People call her Bunny, that was her nickname. And she was such a close friend of Schlumberger. He would go down to her farm and spend an entire summer. He designed a beautiful metal sculpture of a flower basket that's almost as tall as the ceiling for the top of her greenhouse. And every piece of Schlumberger that was made for Mrs. Mellon was bespoke and made in collaboration with her. She wore almost none of it. She was known to take some of her brooches and put them on windowsills to see the light come through the gemstones. She had cocktail rings with pink diamonds, yellow diamonds, white diamonds, didn't wear them. She just loved him, and she loved the process and the creations. So she ended up with about 160 pieces of Schlumberger. Every single thing was unique. Every piece was unique, and none of them could come to auction. According to her will, she left the entire collection to the VMFA in Richmond, Virginia, the Virginia Museum of Fine Art. So if you are ever in Richmond, first of all, it's a wonderful museum. It's just like the most beautiful day. The building, the grounds, a beautiful restaurant, and the permanent collections are great. Half of it probably was from Paul Mellon and Bunny Mellon, but the jewelry is spectacular, what she had from Schlumberger. So we love Schlumberger, and we were the sort of custodians of her Schlumberger for about 18 months. After her death, they sent it here, we photographed it, cataloged it, and then when the estate was settled, we delivered it to the Virginia Museum, and they had a big opening, and it was just fantastic. So we love Schlumberger, and his work, I think, will be around forever, especially now that Tiffany is French-owned. Okay, David Michael. David and Michael are twin brothers from Australia. And I met them. They walked in here one day. They were in New York, and they had a brooch that they wanted to show me. Not this brooch. This brooch I'm going to show you. It's right here. This brooch was really a treasure. It was, to me, a sculpture, a work of art. It was a koi pond that the blue water was represented with a huge aquamarine, a flat cut aquamarine, what we call portrait cut. Behind it was a hand-painted koi. The pond was surrounded by little tiny black rough diamonds that looked like stones. The grass was made by savorites, which sparkled, and then baguette diamonds at the bottom for a little frame so you could stand it up like a little work of art. It was absolutely, I'm still enchanted by it. It's probably one of my top 10 favorite pieces of jewelry ever. So we auctioned it to a really good result and kind of helped put these guys on the map, David and Michael. They don't actually work together anymore. Now it's just Michael, but he still calls the brand David Michael. He's in Boston now. He left Australia and he's in Boston. And he created this jewel for the jewelry book. So when Melanie Grant went to him and said, well, I want to put you in the book, what piece should I use? He said, I want to make something new. So he did. He created this. So I could look at this brooch all day for two reasons. It's an ancient scarab. So you're looking at a faience scarab that's 2,500 years old. His wife actually bought it at auction, and then she broke it. She dropped it. So you've got two things, two references here. One, and I always have to look it up, what is the Japanese ceramic with the gold when they repair it?
Yeah.
Yes, right? So he took this wing broke off, and then so he just made it double winged and filled it in with jewels. It also is very much in the tradition of what Cartier was doing in the 1920s during the Egyptomania when King Tut's tomb was discovered. the Cartier family were great collectors of little antiquities, little faience bits and pieces that they just had in drawers. And they decided at this time in the 20s, when King Tut's tomb was found, they started bejeweling them in this way. So we have been fortunate at Sotheby's to sell a number of these treasures, and they bring, I remember one little Sept about that tall that was just sort of set with some diamonds and rubies and enamel, brought I think $500,000. So they're very rare, very collectible, and so I think what this young man has done is sort of paid homage to that a little bit with this scarab. It's also just a great looking piece of jewelry. It's a little bit hard to see. This, of course, is about a 4-carat brownish yellow diamond. This, and I am going to pass it around, but we're going to keep it on the stand. It's pretty fragile. I just want to kind of keep it intact here. This is a portrait cut diamond, same as I was describing with the koi pond. A diamond that's cut flat and thin, and then on a piece of horn, he painted a lover's eye and put it. I mean, this is a work of art. This is not just a piece of jewelry. This guy is like thinking and creating. And my favorite part of the story is when he brought this to me about a month ago to deliver for this exhibition, and he looked really sad. And I said, I'm going on and on about this jewel. He said, well, what's wrong? And he said, I hate to tell you, he said, I showed it to one client and they bought it. One client, $160,000. So I said, I couldn't be happier. Like, that's the point. Yeah. So take that one around very carefully. We'll just keep it on the stand like that. Don't take it off. But it's that to me is a little masterpiece. And the koi pond I loved, and this I think he outdid himself. So I'm a very big fan of David Michael Jewels. They produce, he makes maybe 15 pieces a year at the most. I mean, he is a one-man show. He set every one of these stones. Most of these blue stones are a stone called apatite, which is a particular very electric color blue, but they're so fragile that you break about half of them in the setting. So he said when he was creating this piece, it really was like he just kept breaking stone after stone, but he knew what he was in for because he chose apatite for that color. So I could talk about that one all day. I love David Michael and I love that brooch. Thelma West is a dear friend of mine. She was part of Brilliant in Black. She's in London, and she's really the first black jeweler, certainly the first black woman, to be in that Bond Street world of high jewelry. And what she creates, again, one-of-a-kind pieces. She's diamonds are her thing. She started her career very young as a diamond grader, and so she understands everything about gemstones. She's a real rock hound, as we call them. And she's also kind of a Renaissance woman because she has a little hotel in Spain and she makes wine, and she really is quite a spectacular, brilliant person. But I love her jewelry, and when she first came to us, she made a necklace very similar to this one. This is the one that you see in this picture, but for the Brilliant in Black show, she brought us this one that Rihanna is wearing. And while it was here, Rihanna borrowed it to wear it to the Met Gala, and then after the Met Gala, it came back here, and then one of our clients purchased it. So it's nice that one of my favorite clients owns that piece. And she just has a way with form, and like this brown enamel. She has the best taste in stones. She always has beautiful diamonds, and I just love what she does. Again, it's like, it seems simple until you really look at it, and sometimes the simplest designs are the hardest to achieve. So I'm just a big Thelma West fan, and if you're ever in London, do visit her shop because it's really, it's just fantastic, and she has a very unique vision of the jewels that she creates, and Rihanna is a big fan. So I'll give you the necklace, and there's the ring.
I know, yeah. Why not?
Yes.
So
Jar. Does everybody know about Jar?
No.
You know Jar? Okay. So this is maybe the most important contemporary jeweler of the 20th century. Just a remarkable, remarkable artist. He is born in New York City in the Bronx. He went to Harvard and trained in literature and some architecture, I think he studied. He went to Paris and started out in textiles, but then kind of made his way into jewelry, but using very humble materials, silver and copper and coral, and not expensive materials. But he just clicked. This was probably about 1976 or 77. He knew how to make things that were interesting, especially to art collectors. And so his business kind of took off pretty fast. He has maintained since the late 70s one of the most mysterious and enigmatic businesses in the jewelry world. He has maintained a very tiny space on the Place Vendôme in Paris, which of course is the epicenter of jewelry. And all around the Place Vendôme is nothing but huge flagships of every major brand until you get to his. And it's a little tiny door that you wouldn't know with windows that never had anything in them. That's kind of his, that's kind of his thing. And he was said to at one time produce about 30 or 40 pieces a year. Not sure how many he's doing now because he is in his 80s now, so he's making fewer pieces. But he is an innovator in many ways. He had a major show here at the Met in 2014, I think it was. Maybe it was 2013. And then before that, his first big retrospective was in London in 2001. So those are really the only shows that he's had. But at the time, and maybe still stands, no, I think Alexander McQueen broke the record, but at the time it was the highest grossing show in the Met's history. And certainly the highest grossing show of any jeweler that's ever happened. Although the V&A right now has a major Cartier show, so we'll have to see when that closes how much money that one made. But Jar is almost unattainable. He's known for selling only to whom he wants to sell and only what he wants to sell. So I know clients that have things that maybe they bought and they weren't so crazy about because they had to buy it so that they could get the thing they wanted. Sort of like Hermes does with handbags, right? Buy this one now and maybe you'll get that one later. And there are a lot of people with a lot of money who really want to buy something from Jar and they just can't. And I'm sure that is very difficult for them. It would be difficult for me just because I couldn't afford it. So I wouldn't be knocking on the door. But I do think there's something magical about it in a way, I think, to create these pieces that are really art. We will have a collection on view in December which has 15 pieces of Jar. So if you can come to the door when we open on December 5th, 6th, 7th, that weekend, come and you will see some of the most spectacular pieces by Jar. This is one which I think it's kind of interesting because I know this is Jar, I can tell this is Jar. If these beads were made by somebody else, they would be worth truly a fraction. I think we have these estimated at 200 to 300,000. And there's just something very Jar about those little rondelles with the diamonds set in the black metal. He's very inspired by the 19th century when jewelry was set in silver-topped gold and then the silver would tarnish. So when you see diamonds in that black metal, that sort of romantic 19th century feel, he's inspired by that. But he does take it into a completely innovative and modern place. So he's not a copycat, you know, he just is inspired by the 19th century. And he's also known, you don't see it in this piece so much, but he's really used colored pave gemstones as paint. And no one has perfected it the way he has. He really, the subtle gradation of stones on, you know, a butterfly's wing is painstaking and just like, it's endless hours of sorting through stones and finding the ones that just sort of slowly change color till they sort of fade away to nothing on the edges of the butterfly's wing. I think I cried twice at that show at the Met. They're pretty amazing pieces. He did, on one of his book covers, there's a zebra brooch that was in the collection of Anne Getty, sold at a house that I dare not name. And it really is one of the most amazing things because it's a black and white piece of striped agate that he carved the head of the zebra from. Wow. It is so perfectly zebra, and then he just put the bridle on it and put diamonds on it and a feather and he was done. So it was just, he's a master. So I would do a little deep dive into Jar if you can, and then come see me in December and you'll see some really great stuff.
I actually booked an appointment with him for a client
Did you?
last year. Yeah.
How hard was
we
that?
have like a French fixer guy that I work with. So it was, we paid the fixer person $2,000 and then we got in touch with his assistant and it was like one of our biggest clients.
It's like MI5.
But, but they met at like at their hotel, they met in the lobby and then he brought them to store. I don't know what they ended up buying. Our member's pretty private, but
Yeah.
yeah, I organized it.
I mean, I've met him through Sotheby's because he does acquire stones at auction. He's known for a lot of things, and one of them is that he just will set the most unusual colored diamonds in particular. You know, he'll take a diamond that's kind of, the nomenclature for colored diamonds is so silly sounding, but for each modifying color, it can just be like grayish, greenish, brownish, yellowish, orange, right? And you just have all these colors strung together. He just goes for these very unusual colors and then sets them in rings and bracelets. And so we do see him every season, particularly in Geneva, where he's just looking to see what we've got on view. But the clients, you know, they treasure these pieces, and the prices are often over what he charged, right? So people think the price that he's charging astronomical prices, and to be honest, he doesn't. The pieces that we sell at auction often bring double what the person paid because you just can't walk in and buy them. So it's an interesting market, and it has stayed strong since the day he started. It's amazing. I'm a big fan.
Speakeasy jewelry.
Yeah, it is. Well, you can see there, right there he is. There's never anything in this little window. And I mean, it's the same spot, and he's a very young man there. Now I think he's 82.
Wow.
So this is probably when he first opened, which would be 77, 78.
He did have a figurine of Queen Elizabeth.
Did he?
Yeah.
Just like an homage when she died?
Like the little Tahitian
Yeah.
but as the queen. It was
That's cool.
And I think
humor.
I think sometimes he puts perfume in there now because he does perfume.
The perfume is on the main.
Is it on its own thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway. David Webb, this necklace, I'm sorry to say, I was going to show you this. It's one of the most amazing David Webb pieces that I've ever seen, and it had to be sent out for a repair yesterday. So I don't have it here to show you, but I do love David Webb, and I like to tell his story a little bit. He is the quintessential New York jeweler. The book calls him the quintessential American jeweler, but he was New York, even though he came from Asheville, North Carolina. He only lived to be 50 years old, and I don't know how this guy, he must never have slept. They still say they have 9,000 designs drawn by the hand of David Webb that have not been produced yet. So they've never made anything that he didn't draw.
Wow.
They just keep pulling from the archives and reworking the things that he did. He was a genius at self-promotion, and he was obsessed with design. So he was known to go to the Met every Saturday, and he exposed himself to every type of art. Then he would come back and he would just mash it all up together. So he would have pre-Columbian elements with Greco-Roman, with an ancient piece of Chinese jade carved, and just put it all on one jewel. He didn't care. And he was the darling of the fashion world. Diana Vreeland, the famous Vogue editor, really put him on the map. She bought a zebra bracelet. He was known for his animal bracelets, all types of animals, but the zebra one in particular she loved. And then she put it on the cover of the magazine when he was only about 30 years old. So that kind of set him off. He also got a lot of contracts to do jewelry in the movies. You know, back then, in the 60s and 70s especially, they used real jewelry. And so he worked every movie that Lana Turner made. She was a big fan of David Webb. She only wore David Webb jewels in the films. So he had a good Hollywood connection too. And he was in the collection of every great lady of the day. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, the Duchess of Windsor, Diana Vreeland, they all loved him. One of my favorite stories that comes from the current owner is that he didn't really sleep much, and he just wanted to keep producing more and more and more. And there was such a high demand for his jewelry all through the 60s that he would take his team of workmen out for dinner and kind of make sure everybody had a couple of beers, and then he'd take them back and they'd all go back to work. I'm sure that's all against the law now, but he would make them work into the wee small hours because the output was incredible what they were creating. And again, I'm sorry I don't have a piece of David Webb, but look at what they're doing now. It's really amazing how they present these designs that were done mostly in the 50s and 60s in such a modern way. David Webb himself died in 1975. As I said, he was only 50 years old. So he really did this body of work in about a 20-year period. And I've been privileged to go through the archives with my friend Levi Higgs, who runs it. And every mold, every drawing, every single thing is still there in drawers. It's very, very detailed archive. So he's the master. He dominated New York, and we still get a tremendous amount of David Webb that comes to auction and collections. It's just starting to fade away a little bit. When I joined 13 years ago, every season, because these were ladies, their heyday of jewelry buying was in the 60s. They're living to be 100, and then they they either pass away or they just decide to sell. And so we're just now seeing a tiny little bit of trail off from all of that jewelry that he was making in the 60s and 70s. The company did have a little bit of a lull, and then it was purchased and sort of reborn again. So now it's really doing very well. But they keep it niche, like all these houses do. Not as niche as Jar, but Verdura only has one store here. David Webb only has 2 little locations, one on Madison Avenue. They're actually going to be our across the street neighbors at 75th and Madison. And then they have a little tiny presence in Beverly Hills at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. When every piece is one of a kind and rare and unique, you can't fill 100 stores like a Tiffany or a Van Cleef. So we love David Webb. And actually, that's about the only picture I've ever seen of David Webb. So this is the great Art Smith. Art Smith was, again, really an artist first and foremost. And I learned about him when we did Brilliant in Black. I was not familiar with him. He was working in mostly bronze, silver, not so much fine materials. He did make some things in gold for commission. But what's so remarkable about Art Smith is that he couldn't be the front man for his own brand because of his color. So he was sold at Neiman's and Saks before any black designer, but he was never invited to the trunk shows. He was never there, and most of the clients never knew anything about him. They just loved his designs because they were so of the moment. You can see this you can see what he's wearing there.
Yeah.
This is the bracelet.
Yeah.
That's the bracelet. Most of these pieces are one of a kind, very rare, very hard to come by, and it's just staggering to me to think that this man had such a career and was almost completely unknown until maybe 10 years ago when he's been rediscovered. And there are dealers who specifically search for Art Smith pieces, and they turn up sometimes in the most unlikely places. People don't know what they have or where it came from. But they are all really, he was a studio jeweler. Everything is hand signed, everything is handmade, and I just think just some of the most amazing modern pieces. This looks like it could have been made today to me, and this bracelet is from about 1962. So Art Smith is one to look at. Belle Perrone. This is a whole story unto itself. Let me pass this one around. Suzanne Belle Perrone, and this is a really pretty cuff. I'll tell you about the jewel, first of all. What they do now, this is a vintage brooch that Belle Perrone would have made in the 30s, maybe early 1940s, and now they've created a bracelet for it. So, because brooches are not so much worn anymore, it's such a great way to have a piece of Belle Perrone that you enjoy wearing as a cuff, and then it can come off and be worn as a brooch if you choose to do so. So this is a new thing that they've been doing over at Belle Perrone. Her story is really such a movie in the making. If you don't know about her, I would say definitely read up on Belle Perrone. She was born in 1900. She was a jewelry design person from almost the moment she was born. Her mother told stories about how she just wouldn't stop drawing. At 19 years old, she joined the house of René Boivin. This was an old established jewelry house from the 19th century. René Boivin had founded it himself, but he died in 1917. His wife took over the shop, Madame Boivin, and she hired almost exclusively women. One of the women was a 19-year-old Suzanne Belle Perrone. So now you've got this woman-owned, woman-run shop with mostly women in the shop making the jewelry, and you have Suzanne Belle Perrone creating designs that were so ahead of their time, so modern. You have to remember this is about 1920, and everybody is wearing Art Deco, which I'll talk a little bit about Art Deco in a minute. How am I doing on time? Oh my goodness, am I over?
Not yet.
When was I supposed to wrap?
We don't care.
It's okay?
Keep talking about diamonds.
Because we do talk about Art Deco. But,
We're not leaving.
Now you've got Suzanne Belperone. She's working away at the House of Boivin with all these women, and she just decides she wants credit for her work because she becomes the design director at 23 years old. She's now the creative director of the entire company. Well, Madame Boivin says, no, this is my husband's business, it's René Boivin, and you're not getting credit. So she went out on her own at 23 and started her own company. She had little fits and starts, and she was trying to make a business, and she finally partnered with a small house called Hertz. She started working with them, so some pieces are actually signed Hertz Belperone from her early career. Then, when we get to the war, the Hertz family were Jewish, so she actually took the company from them, and after the war, she gave it back to them. So she kind of saved it. She was also a member of the French Resistance. While she was making jewelry, she kept making jewelry all through the war in Paris, which was also almost unheard of because most people stopped. And her life story is really remarkable. It would make a really, really good movie. But as a designer, she was a real maverick. Again, doing these, like when all the Art Deco lines were so sharp and lots of baguette diamonds and lots of gems and everything was platinum, here she was using things like chalcedony, like nobody was using these materials. And she loved unusual colors, round forms, very stark pieces, and she really just created something that was so revolutionary that her following didn't really start keeping her afloat until maybe 1935. Then she became really the darling of the fashion set. Very similar in a way to David Webb, in that once those fashion editors, Carmel Snow, I think, was the main editor of Vogue at the time, a woman named Carmel Snow, and she really was the one who picked Belperone up. Then the Duchess of Windsor became her top client. So once the Duchess of Windsor started buying her, then everybody started buying her. Now, Belperone lived into the 80s, but she was really forgotten after about 1955 or 1960, and it's amazing how you can be so popular and then all of a sudden you're gone. So Sothebys was instrumental in kind of bringing her back, because when we sold the Duchess of Windsor's collection, there were 17 pieces of Belperone's jewelry. Only 3 of them were even attributed to her, because she never signed her pieces. The irony is that she left Boivin to get credit, and then when she opened her own house, she refused to sign her name on the jewels, and she said, "My style is my signature." So this is her famous line. She's known for this, but it makes it very hard to authenticate things. And because her prices are so strong now for the vintage pieces, they're often copied. So this is one of our biggest challenges. Again, the collection I mentioned that has all the jar also has 25 pieces from Suzanne Belperone. So that's the collection you'll have to make sure you come see in December. But really quite a maverick, and so far ahead of her time. I would love to have just met her. Just had dinner with her and kind of understand how she built that business. She never had a storefront. She was always kind of upstairs and always on referral, very similar to Jar. And interesting that they were so similar and, you know, so many decades apart. So big Belperone fan. And owned by the same family in New York that owns Verdura. So if you go to Fifth Avenue to Verdura, they have the salons side by side, and the Belperone salon is a recreation of her beautiful Paris apartment. So that's always nice to see too. Now, a few words about Cartier. Cartier, of course, is like the behemoth international brand and has been for 100 years. It was started in the 19th century, but really didn't take off until the teens, when the 3 brothers, and I can never remember all of their names, but 3 brothers really were instrumental in making this a global brand. And these guys, from a business perspective, were so far ahead of their time. They understood that they needed to start operating in New York, operating in London, and they wanted to be a global brand. But somehow they maintained the quality and the rarity and the beautiful design aesthetic of what they were doing. The pieces here, this is an interesting piece. I want to pass this ring around. This is called the Boule ring. This, you can see, one side is rubies, one side is diamonds. This is a great 1950s design that shows up in every great collection from the day. Bunny Mellon had it, Babe Paley. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm pointing at one of the things being like, ask crazy.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, I just know I'm going overtime, so I'm trying to be so.
You go first.
Okay, I'm trying to talk as fast as I can. Thank you. So, Cartier, there's a fabulous book written by the great-granddaughter of this gentleman, and it's called The Cartiers. And it took the jewelry world by storm during COVID. We all got it, we all read it, and then we all watched a million Zooms with Francesca Cartier, who's the woman who wrote the book. She's a friend of mine, she's great. It is a great, great read. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Tutti Frutti style here that they invented. But the Art Deco period belongs to Cartier. There was a tremendous amount of Art Deco jewelry produced at that time between the wars, and of course Art Deco is celebrating 100 years right now. It was 1925, the Great Exposition in Paris that became, it wasn't called Art Deco I think until the 70s, and somebody coined that. But Cartier really was the leader in every way. I think, yes. So we're gonna finish here with some Art Deco. This bracelet, which it's a real rare treat to be able to show this to you because these pieces are so rare. We sold one during COVID online, a single lot auction, a Cartier Tutti Frutti, and because they are such a known commodity and they are so sought after, no one could see it. We were all in lockdown, but we did it anyway, and it brought $1.5 million. So a Tutti Frutti bracelet by Cartier is extremely rare. Now, other houses did Tutti Frutti. What was happening in the 20s is that all the Maharajas in India were bringing their traditional jewels that were set with all of these carved rubies, emeralds, and sapphires, but they were set in high carat gold with diamonds and in the Indian style. They were bringing them to Paris and having the houses reset them with platinum and diamonds in a modern way. So Cartier was the leader, but every house did it, even Tiffany, Van Cleef & Arpels. This one is by Mauboussin, which at the time was just as well known and just as respected as Cartier or Van Cleef & Arpels. And what I love about this is an opportunity to get one that's not quite so wide. So this one probably won't sell for $1 million. Might sell for 100 or 200,000. So this is a very, very special piece, and it just has those perfect little carved leaves in emerald, sapphire, and ruby.
We want the jar piece over this one.
Absolutely.
Here, I'm gonna hold two.
This little clip is Cartier. So this could go, if this were unsigned, and there were many unsigned Tutti Frutti pieces in the 1920s and 30s, if this were unsigned, the value of this would probably be about 5,000, but because it's Cartier, this will probably sell for about 100,000. The signature is everything. So in our business, that really does mean a lot. And again, it's the Cartier signature is often copied. So authentication is a huge part of what we do, especially when it comes to Art Deco jewels. This necklace, another example, if this were Cartier from the period, probably about 250,000, but because it's unsigned, it's in the auction for 30,000, 30 to 50. So that signature, especially Art Deco Cartier, makes a huge difference. Are you getting them in the back rows too? Getting the pieces? Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you have looked through your authentication process, you know it's sort of Cartier.
Yeah.
How does that change sort of the price differential between signed versus not signed?
Dramatically. Well, I'll give you an example. This is a good example. This is an Art Deco diamond, what we call a diamond strap bracelet. The output of jewelry in the Art Deco period was pretty high. You know, things were good globally between the wars. After World War I, there was money. And so a bracelet like this commensurately was not as expensive as it is now. I'm not saying everybody could afford this, but you didn't have to be as wealthy then as you do now to buy something like this. If this bracelet, just exactly as you see it, were signed Van Cleef or Cartier, and those are the top Art Deco signatures, this bracelet would be worth 600,000 to 800,000, maybe bring $1 million on a good day. If it were signed Tiffany, Mauboussin, one of the little bit lesser houses, it might bring 150 to 250,000. But because this is unsigned, exact same amount of diamonds and platinum, this could sell for 30,000, 35,000. So the signature makes a huge difference. And the authentication process, that's why someone could absolutely buy this figure out how to sign it, and then try to auction it. So we have to, we ferret out those bad signatures all the time. And it's one of the assurances that we bring is that we're authenticating something through a variety of ways and with our relationships with the houses. And yeah, so on a piece like this, it could be a dramatic difference. Pass that around. Send that one around too. This is so pretty. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything else.
Big one.
Oh, this one.
What's that?
Isn't that wild? This really should have been, I should have covered this earlier with some of the contemporary designers. This is made by our friend James de Givenchy. His brand is called Taffin, which is I think his middle name or one of his family names. He happens to be the nephew of one of the greatest fashion designers of the 20th century, Hubert de Givenchy. But he's really an extremely talented designer and artist in his own right. So this is a necklace that he loaned us for this show. It's just wild. It's just the most amazing color gemstones. And what I like about it, this is one of his calling cards, is this colored ceramic. My colleague who left earlier, Charlotte, was here, and she has her engagement ring from him. And he does beautiful things with colored ceramic. So he's just a friend of the house. We once had our own jewelry line here called Sothebys Diamonds, and James was the designer. This goes back about 20 years. Now he's been out on his own. He has a beautiful salon here, and he's also, again, one of those sort of insider niche jewelers here in New York City, and I just think he does great things. So he's a good friend of the house, and we love Taffin. Now, I think I've covered everything on the table. So let's, we could do some questions now if you want. I'll leave that slide up. But yes?
What do you think of all the lab-grown diamonds just for jewelry?
No lab diamonds. That's all.
I'm so glad I got that while I'm wearing this.
Just a question I was asked also like in relation to art pieces. What's the sort of like demographic and also like global provenience of the people that are buying at the auction?
Buyers at auction? It's interesting. If you go back 30, 40 years, most of the buyers at auction were trade. They were just dealers who were then going to resell it at shows or in their shops. Private buyers have been increasing, and now I would say our private buyers are about 60 to 65% of the buyers, and it really goes all over the board. I mean, some of the biggest collections that I work with are people who never wear any of the jewelry. Two men in particular. Their wives might borrow a piece here or there to wear, but they're not that into the jewelry. They're really collecting them as works of art. And so I love that aspect of it. Younger people, there was that time maybe 10 years ago where they kept saying younger people don't want things, they want experiences. That's really not true. Young people are collecting things too.
And do they ask about like the ethical provenience of certain gems? Are they, because it's normally like a theme in Gen Z?
They do.
Generally? Yeah.
They do. We do have affidavits that have to be signed on certain pieces, but the reality is we are the secondary market. So we are not acquiring gemstones, we are not manufacturing jewelry, and so that aspect is very difficult for us to touch on. Yeah.
Thank you.
What about the black ring there? I think we did.
Oh yeah, this is another Thelma. That's Thelma West also. That's a great ring. Yes.
Why did the brothers, was it David Michael?
Yeah.
What happened there?
Oh, because the one wanted to pursue something not in jewelry, and then the one who's still making jewelry fell in love and moved to Boston to get married.
Okay.
So it was really a love story.
That's cool.
And they're still very close, and
Good.
they just don't work together anymore.
Okay.
Yes.
We're students at the Sothebys Institute of Art, and I was wondering what would your advice be for a young person who just graduated and wants to get into this field, particularly in jewelry?
I think the best advice, if you can do it, is gemology school, because it's very hard to get to a level without what we call the GG, the graduate gemology degree. It takes about a year full time. It can take 2 years if you do it part time. And a lot of people do come to Sotheby's in our department and then work on it. We do make that sort of available to them. We help give them time to go to the GIA because it is convenient here in New York City. There's only 2 locations. One is here and one is in Carlsbad, California, near San Diego. But I do think that's that, and then I just recommend buying books and reading. That's what I'm largely self-taught in jewelry. I just did it because I loved it, and I just started buying books and reading and reading and reading and reading. And the way I got hired at Sothebys, I've told this story a million times. We do, a lot of departments here do what they call an objects test. So when you come here to be a specialist, you have to talk about your category. So a woman that hired me, she's no longer here, she retired, Lisa Hubbard, she just came out with a tray of jewelry and she said, tell me about these. And there were 9 pieces, and only because I had such an extensive library at home and because I had obsessively read all these books did I know, and I nailed every single one, only because of the books. And we just sold a piece recently that was in that test. We actually had it in the woman's jewelry was in the vault for like 17 years.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I just ask, with the chalcedony piece,
Yeah.
how does that detach?
It's got pin stems there, and you just you
Okay.
undo the pin stems, and I think it just pops right out.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful piece though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So pretty.
I like chalcedony. It's like little, it's like moonstone.
Yeah.
It feels nice. You know,
She
but
loved, I mean, Belperone used a lot of chalcedony. That was like one of her things.
Yeah.
And she loved odd color combinations. We have a bracelet in the sale that's like a big cabochon amethyst with a very like odd colored chalcedony, but somehow it works.
Try it on.
I'm gonna try it on. Anyone else? Yes.
Does using metals such as like steel or other metals that I guess are not considered precious, especially does that reduce the value of the jewelry?
Not so much anymore. Honestly, it's usually more about the gemstones, and I think so much of the jewelry that we've talked about today is valued more as a work of art. So it's the same as a painting, right? The canvas, the paint, the frame. There's no actual value there. It's what's done with it. And so I think people are really into these innovative metals, and it doesn't affect the value so much. It's really more about the gemstones.
Do you think jewelry designers of today will be able to achieve these kind of like, obviously they're making works of art, but do you think they'll have the notoriety that the jewelry houses of old will be able to have?
I think some of them will, but it's a very crowded space. I work with so many young people now. It is so hard to get into the business because the materials cost so much money. And that's the main, it's very hard to start, right? You can find your way to find canvas and paint. I hate to keep using that as an example, but our work is there's intrinsic value to these materials, and they're not easy to come by. I do think there will be some, but they won't all make it. Even the ones that I love, it's not everyone can become jar if you're making 15 pieces a year, and there are many that hope to be that, and some will. Hemmerle is a big business. They're niche. Again, they only have one little store in Munich, but they're aggressive with trunk shows and traveling the world and making sure they come to New York twice a year, and they're in Palm Beach twice a year. Like, they really know how to do that business. They go to all the shows. It's very, very hard to find that staying power.
Do you personally collect? And if so, could you talk a little bit about your collection?
Sure, I do collect a little bit. I think brooches are my thing because I've been trying to promote the wearing of brooches for many years, mostly because we have so many to sell. when they're cheaper? Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, brooches don't bring huge prices all the time. They really don't. And when I came here, I just started wearing them on my lapel. Women find them like, oh, my grandmother wore brooches. And women don't really wear a lot of suits so much, so it's like you need fabric to support them, right? Even if a woman does wear a suit, they're generally lighter fabrics. So these things, once I start wearing them, I have to wear them because my suits are also full of holes. So there is, I see why people don't always want to wear a brooch. And the heyday of the brooch, women were wearing thick suits every day to lunch. I mean, that's what you wore. It was like a Dior suit or a Chanel suit. That's what a brooch was made for. So my collection, I finally decided I had to acquire some. So I do have this one. I have an Oscar Heyman diamond gardenia, which to me, if you've never seen the Oscar Heyman gardenia, I think it's brilliant because the leaves are green enamel and they're just shiny, exactly like a gardenia leaf. So I happen to love that. That's kind of my fancy brooch. And then I have some things from Tiffany. I have an Elsa Peretti brooch that's that black silk rose on a gold stem. I like that one a lot. That's very modern. I think Elsa Peretti was also another like maverick, way ahead of her time. You know, what she did at Tiffany by creating that whole sterling silver market so that women could buy their own jewelry. You know, they didn't have to wait for someone to buy it for them, and it was jewelry that could be worn to the office, worn every day. I mean, that was revolutionary in 1980. So I'm a big Elsa Peretti fan too. So brooches are mostly what I have. I did have a bracelet once. I bought a Verdura bracelet that I just thought I had to have, and I wore it twice, I think, and then the price of gold got so high, so I sold it. Which is something I learned at auction, is like the turnover. Buying and selling is part of the fun. You buy something for your collection, then maybe you come across one that's better version, so you get rid of that one, you get a new one, and there's, you know, it can be fun. I think that's an hour.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? One last question? No? Yes.
Sorry, since you rejected my last question on lab diamonds, how do you decide when you want to take a piece of jewelry? You're talking about the swans and taking gems from like old pieces and then making it into something new.
Yeah.
How do you decide that? Because you're destroying something.
Very interesting, because there's a long tradition of people remaking jewelry to a modern style, especially from the 19th century into the 20th. A lot of Art Deco pieces had old stones. I think now, more than ever, like the signature wasn't so important in the 30s, 40s, 50s as it is now. Now, if it's a signed piece, it really doesn't make sense, because that signed piece is the value, and it will not be considered that. We actually just had something the other day where it's a Schlumberger ring that somebody took a diamond out of, or no, they took like a, I don't know what, maybe a yellow diamond or something out and put something else in. So it's really no longer authenticatable as Schlumberger. We can't put Schlumberger in the bold head. So I would say probably it's not a great idea. And lab-grown diamonds, I just can't talk about them. It wasn't a full rejection.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. That was fun.